Hold up. This is the headline news. The National Association of Realtors proposed a $418 million settlement. Proposed is the key word here. Honestly, there is a lot of clickbait headlines that are just not accurate. We don't even know if the Department of Justice is going to approve this, but there is a lot of speculation. And in today's video, we are going to unpack the truth about all of this. We are going to talk about what is being proposed, how it's going to affect my business, and what are things going to look like moving forward. I'm Katherine Kranenburg, and I'm a greater Boston area realtor, and I'm excited to share what I believe and what my opinions are based on the facts of this proposed settlement. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to say that as a professional realtor, I understand that there is a lot of unknown and that there is a lot of fear in change, but I can assure you that the real estate industry has experienced so much change and we have always prevailed. This settlement proposal is yet another change, and we are going to navigate this with grace for you, the consumers. What does this mean? What is it all about? I'm going to explain that in the best layman's terms possible so you as the consumer can understand. So one thing that has been consistent in the last several months is that the lawyers have said consistently that the National Association of Realtors has been commission fixing, price fixing, which is not true at all. They basically said there is a standard of 6%, 3%, 5%. Are you getting it? I mean, are you understanding there's really not a fixed commission? So whether that commission is 6%, 5%, 4%, 3%, 2.5%, it's an agreement between the broker and the seller. So the first thing that the settlement is proposing is that all buyer commissions not be publicized in the multiple list service. The second complaint that's being made is that home buyers don't have the right to negotiate their commissions with their buyer's agent. Basically, this complaint says when the home buyer is purchasing a property, the buyer's agent commission is banked into the price. And it says that the buyers don't have the right to negotiate the commission, meaning they don't get to afford the house at that price. The settlement is actually going to be paid out over a 4-year period. And there are 3 actions that are going to be put in place and how we're going to be maneuvering and how we are going to conduct real estate in the future. So the first thing that they are proposing is that buyer's compensation will not be displayed and publicized in the multiple list service. However, brokerages can have those compensations displayed on their websites and are actually probably in the process right now creating brokerage forms that publicize the buyer's compensation, which leads us to buyer-broker agreement. And this is where compensation, commission, and the terms between the buyer and the buyer's agent is created. So the second thing this is proposing is that buyers have to have a buyer-broker agreement with their buyer's agent. They will be able to negotiate the commission through that buyer-broker agreement, whether it's negotiating the fee at a flat fee, an hourly fee, or a straight commission. This agreement has to be set in place by the buyer and the buyer's agent prior to seeing any property. Now, how does that affect my business? Actually, I will just say it doesn't. And here's why. I have been using buyer-broker agreements since the day that I started in the real estate industry almost 17 years ago. And that is for a protection for both the buyer and the broker. So I just want to pause for a minute, because if you're a realtor and you have not practiced using or implementing a buyer-broker agreement, I don't even know how you're still in business. I don't even know how your buyers feel protected and represented without this agreement. The third part of this is that brokers don't have to be part of the multiple list service if they don't want to. These clickbait articles are basically saying that home prices are going to be slashed, which isn't true. If you look at the last couple of months, the way that we realtors have been conducting business actually hasn't changed. Even when the settlements started really showing up in the news about a year ago, nothing has changed. So let's dive into how this is going to affect my business. Because honestly, I'm the one in the trenches every single day. I'm the one negotiating the contracts with buyers, negotiating between the buyers and the sellers. I'm doing the business every single day. So these are kind of hard conversations and difficult conversations to have, regardless of people thinking realtors just open doors, which is so not true. So I think my perspective matters. And here's what it is. Prior to the National Association of Realtors, the structure was kind of crazy in the Wild West, right? There were no code of ethics. There was no standard business practices in real estate. So why would it actually need to be that way now? Try not to confuse you, but here's a good question. Is the seller paying the buyer's agent commission? And why wasn't the seller paying the buyer directly so the buyer can pay the buyer's agent commission directly? Okay, so that's really the main question, because prior to this, we didn't have wire transfer, escrow agents, escrow companies. So the big question was really transparency, which now we have more of. Okay, so let me know in the comments below if you've been able to follow this. If you have any questions, just put it in the comment and we'll address it, because maybe your question is someone else's question as well. So here is how we arrived to where we are today. So in essence, decoupling commissions is basically going to start looking like this as we move forward. The seller is going to pay the listing agent, and the seller could offer a concession to the buyers that would then give that to the buyer's agent, or the seller could directly compensate the buyer's agent, as well as the buyers can compensate the buyer's agent. Okay, so here's a couple of things. The seller can put in a concession in the MLS, and the buyer can use that concession for whatever they want to use it for. To pay the buyer's agent commission, to pay for closing costs, to help with closing costs, to help pay for repairs. It's not the seller's responsibility. That is really up to the buyer, how they want to use that concession. So let's take an example that the house based on the comparables is $1 million. And the seller is thinking, well, I'm going to put the house on the market for, let's say, $950,000. So I can save the market money by pricing my house at $950,000. Now, that doesn't make sense to me. And I'm a realtor. Actually, if we take that example, the seller will go on the market for $1 million and will net 3% more by listing it based on the comparables of the neighborhood of the subject property. Doesn't that make sense? The three things that are in this agreement has to do with alignment, compensation, and services. Again, nothing has changed. Okay, let's not overcomplicate things, right? There's a listing agent who works with the seller, and there is a buyer who works with the buyer's agent. Each of them have their own agreements with those prospective realtors. Ultimately, I think that the buyer's transparency is just really going to be a game changer. I mean, before, buyer compensation was listed on the MLS. Now, buyer compensation is not going to be listed on MLS. It's going to be listed on the broker's website or the broker's form, the agent's form. There's going to be more of a dialogue upfront when they first meet with clients. So again, I think it's really going to come down to just that. Transparency, decoupling of commissions, how a buyer's agent gets paid. So overall, I would say, I hope that I have shed some real good guidance on this misconception and clickbait, misleading media headlines in newspapers and the social media and YouTube. But overall, I feel like not a lot is going to change. And if you want to